Three, two, one. Welcome, everybody, to your weekly vibe check. This is FraxCheck number 42 from May 31st to June 6th. I hope everybody's doing great out there. My name is Capital K. I will be your host today. But before we jump in to checking the chain and going to the source of truth, please smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, and join the conversation at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter and Telegram. Be sure to also go to our Substack, flywheeldefi.com. Ton of great content out there as well. But anyways, without further ado, let's dive right into this week's Frax Check. And as always, we start with the very first flagship product, Frax itself. And here we've been stagnant, I want to say, for more than 10 Frax checks so far. So that's 2.5 months. We are hanging on to that $1 billion threshold. We're at $1.04 billion in the Frax supply. Very, very on the edge here, guys. Next slide, we'll talk about the peg because, Frax is a stable coin. And you see here, we're actually trading super tightly between 0.999 and $1. So peg check, very strong. Now we're going to go to Curve and see what it looks like to swap 100 million of Frax. We took that and we received an exchange rate of 0.9974. This is not an exchange rate that I like to see. There is definitely an imbalance in the pool. I definitely like to see this like an 8, like a 0.998 as like the lowest floor. So we're definitely getting down to territories I do not want to see. Next, we have the collateralization percent, which again, we hit an all-time high of 94.8. And since then, we've pretty much remained flat, as you can kind of see right there. I believe we've been flat for at least maybe 6 weeks or so. So we are on our march. We are on our march to 100%, but we're now at 94.8 to be exact. Now, next to that, we have our decentralization percent. Here, we peaked at around the high mid 20s, and now we are at a 21.5%. Also, again, remaining pretty flat for the last 4 weeks or so. Well, that's enough for the Frax stablecoin. Now we move on to the liquidity as a service in the form of Frax BP. Frax BP is a base pool on Curve, and currently we have 500 million in TVL. But the issue here is that, or rather not an issue, but we've been pretty much flat around this 500, 510 kind of range for quite some time now. And on the volume front, we have only processed 634K for the month of June. Granted, it's only been 6 days, but that is very, very low. That's barely 0.1%, slightly above 0.1% of the pool. So there's a lot of idle liquidity just hanging out there. Then now let's take a look at how Frax BP stacks up against the competition. We have Frax BP at 500 million, then 3 Pool at 397 million, Frax 3 CRV at 287 million, and Frax PP at 112 million. So if you do some quick and dirty math here, you see that Frax BP is about 900 million versus 3 Pools is 397 million. So definitely almost like 2.2x that of 3 Pool. Frax has become the predominant liquidity pool on Curve. No questions asked. And then let's switch our gears, and we talk about IQ. And what is IQ? Well, IQ is actually a encyclopedia for all of crypto knowledge. And the reason why we want to talk about them is because it shares the same founder as Frax Finance, aka Mr. Sam Kazemian. Sam founded both IQ before Frax, and I want to talk about specifically the staking of IQ today. So similar to Curve or Frax, you could lock your IQ from 1 week to 4 years with a 4x on your voting power when locking for 4 years. Then this power decays linearly, just like Curve and Frax. Well, you may ask, why would I want to stake my IQ? Well, I have 116 reasons why you should, because the APR right now is 116%. And I want to shout out to that one additional staker that has staked since last week. We were at 179. Today we are at 180. So shout out to that solo staker out there that just jumped onto this APR to yield here. Quick recap on the landscape so far. The market cap of IQ is 76 million. There are 1.1 billion IQ locked, and there's about 650K of IQ volume daily. Now, there are a ton of on-chain liquidity, so almost 6.4 million worth of on-chain liquidity. So there's plenty of ways for you to get IQ. But speaking of, why would you want to get IQ to even stake in the first place? Well, there is a pretty large treasury of 16.3 million. Okay, 16.3 million IQ here for you to, I'm sorry, 16.3 million in the treasury for you to manage. And that's what the reason why you should stake your IQ, so that you can have a say in controlling where this treasury goes. And a fairly large portion, 35% of this treasury, is in FrxETH. So that's a healthy chunk. Plus almost $2 million, or about 12%, in convex CVX. Very, very healthy treasury. I would definitely be paying attention here. Moving on, we have our favorite product, aka the FrxETH product. We're up 2.3% since last week. Not as great of a growth that we had seen previously, but still, I feel like we always go through this massive spike up, then like 2 weeks or 3 weeks like this consolidation, like 2%, 4%, 2%, 4%. Then we hit another 12 out of nowhere. So hoping to see that pattern resume here as well. Well, let's take a look at where these FrxETH are hanging out. We see that 66% of them are hanging out in FrxETH, which is actually the same from last week, so no change there. Then we have the curve LP with only 25% of the supply. We previously seen this number start from like actually maybe even higher than 50%, and then we dwindled it down to like 25%, and this is kind of what the market is kind of comfortable with, as we've kind of been in this 25% range for a while. Then there's the remaining monetary premium, as Sam K likes to calls it, and we're at 9%, where folks are just holding FrxETH or using FrxETH somewhere else outside of the Frax flywheel. Now, FrxETH is still a stablecoin. Therefore, we got to check the peg. And you see here that we have a FrxETH to ETH exchange rate of 0.9989. It's not the best we've seen, because we've seen it go to 1, but this is also okay. This is acceptable for a LSD wrap stable, or a stablecoin peg to ETH. Well, we can't just trust a dashboard, so we got to go into Curve and see what we get in the markets. By swapping 3,500 ETH, we get an exchange rate of 0.9988. Like I said previously with Frax, the stablecoin, I like to see a 8 or a 9 in the exchange rate. When we see a 7, it just gets a little dicey, because I hate feeling like I'm paying for a full price swap when I'm just swapping stables for each other. And for the TVL of this curve pool of FrxETH and ETH, we have 164 million in TVL. And the blend right now is about 33% ETH, 66% FrxETH. Well, let's take a look at the market share of the LSD landscape. We see here that we actually experienced our very first down week in the market share. We are actually down 80 bips in terms of our market share. We are at 2.45%. I believe we were 2.47 the week prior to that. So I definitely don't like to see this. And I feel like we are getting, this is, I would say, just a blip. To be completely honest, this is definitely just a blip. I believe a large part of it because there's a validator queue that is kind of showing a very low APR. So folks are just seeing that sticker APR and being hesitant to stake while the validator queue clears up. And we kind of see that, like I said, in the stakes, in the APRs, in the APYs here, as shown on DeFi Llama. If you take a look, we are at 4.7%. That is definitely, oh, I should have sorted this, but effectively, we are second and third. We are sharing the list with a stake wise, also at 4.69%. So in total, we have the very top Anchor at 4.9%. Then we have Stakewise and us at 4.69%. Then we have Lido at 4.4 and Rocket Pool at 3.7. Frankly, not the greatest APY, obviously, because we're used to showing sevens here, at sometimes even nines. But I think the validator queue is quite long at this point. That's why we're seeing such a low APR. Now, after this, we'll talk about a Frax's third stablecoin, which is the FPI. And here we have a supply of 82.6 million, which is kind of unchanged. So that should have been a zero there from last week. And we're currently pegged to an inflation index rate of 5%. And FPI is currently 37 bips above the required peg. So very healthy there. And the treasury is comprised of 89.3 million. And of that, 46% of the treasury, which is FPI and Frax, is being put into the convex, effectively the convex liquidity pool. And there's an equity amount of 4.5 million. The equity amount means that the assets, all of the treasury, minus the liabilities, which is all the FPI outstanding, the difference there is 4.5 million. So if FPI were to close down tomorrow, that 4.5 million would all accrue to the VEFPIS. Now, we move on to one of the legs of the DeFi Trinity, which is Frax Lend, aka the lending facility. Here we have 264 million in TVL, 75 million borrowed, and a 77% utilization rate. The way I calculated the utilization rate is by taking the amount borrowed divided by the amount lent. That way we can see that for every single dollar borrowed, every single dollar lent, 77 cents is being borrowed. That's an increase of 8.4% from last week. We went from the low 60s to high 70s in 2 weeks. So people are definitely engaging in some leverage activity here. But what I also want to highlight here is that you see the collateral value has actually almost recovered to where we were prior to the actually we went way past the Circle USDC fiasco back in early March. You see here that we got to a high of almost 180 million. Then we dropped to a low of almost 50 million. And then now we've climbed all the way back up to like our 165 million. So we've definitely gone from, top of the range to the bottom of the range and back. So for the collateral value, I kind of like to see that. And on the other side, you want to see how much borrowed's been looking. Well, we are frankly almost 1.5x of the borrowed amount during the last, before the Circle fiasco. So FraxLend is fully picking up steam as if the USDC Circle thing never even happened. Kind of love to see it. Now let's take a look at some pairs. So the pairs here, I thought that was quite interesting, is we've been at a almost 2% borrow for FrxETH for the past, I don't know, I would say like 4 FraxChecks or so. Like that's a long time for you to just kind of just let it sit there. Then I want to highlight also for CRV Frax after CRV USD. So before CRV USD, we're earning about like 9%, I would say, in this pair. But ever since CRV USD, it kind of dropped down to 7. But I would say that is still a very, very healthy earning when, if you believe that CRV is good collateral, you can come here and just put that in and earn a nice 7%. Additionally, if folks are also leveraging up on FXS right now, as you can see, the borrow rate on FXS for Frax is 12%, kind of high. So folks out there are definitely getting some leverage FXS. On the last leg of the DeFi Trinity, we have Frax Swap. Here we have 63.8 million in TVL, which is 90 bips drop from last week. But what's interesting is that over the last 6 days, we have already facilitated $6 million in trading volume, aka that's about 9.4% utilization rate. Granted, it may feel like a lot for just the last 6 days. We got 10% of the pool already, but this is much, much lower than what we used to be getting. For FraxSwap, let me show you on the next slide. This pool, particularly the FXS Frax pool, used to be generating 15 million in volume for a 7-day, but now we're down to only 5. So the volume have definitely just been completely decimated, down by 66% to 5 million. So definitely don't like to see that, but it is what it is. And I'm just here to give you the truth via the chain. Now we're going to move on to our profitability section. Here, we're going to talk about, we're going to cover the AMO first, and then we're going to break down each of the AMO's revenue engines. So first up, we have the Curve AMO, which facilitated about 500, or rather, which has 526.5 million in TVL. It increased by 1.5 million since last week. On the liquidity AMO, we saw a drop of 1.4 million down to 72 million for this week. And the lending AMO remained flat at 95 million, and the investor AMO lost 2.6 million down to 130. Therefore, we have a 30 bips drop in our total AMO, the grand total of all the AMOs, down to $824.1 million. And let's take a look at how we are earning for these for the convex AMO. Here we have, that should say June profit. June profit so far is 190K. We've earned 170K in CRV and about 12K in CVX and 12K in FXS. Why is the bribe 0? Well, it's because we paid for June bribes on the last day of May. So that's why we are currently going to be, I want to wager that we will be quite green in June. So moon in June. That is the idea. Next, we have our FraxLend AMO. As mentioned, the FraxLend AMO did not increase this week, so we are still at 67 million lent out for the week with a 75 million total minted Frax. So highly, highly effective here. Effective utilization rate. Let me just do a quick math. 7 divided by 75. That is a 90%, 89% utilization rate for all the Frax that was minted by the FraxLend AMO being lent out. Love to see it. For the revenue for June, we received $22,000 from the FraxLend AMO so far. Again, we are just printing here and we love to see it. But what we hate to see, guys, is this element, a liquidation. Although we appreciate the revenue, we want people to stay safe out there, and somebody got liquidated on the CVX Frax pair, and we're able to generate $304. It's $304, not 304K, so I got to correct that there. But stay safe out there, everybody. Do not get liquidated. Stay safe. And lastly, we have the FPI revenue, which pulls in about 8,848. Actually, I should say profit because that is net after paying out the expense. So to consolidate, for the AMO, we have 193K in the convex, 22K in FraxLend, $304 for the FraxLend liquidation, $202,000 for FrxETH, and 8.8K for FPI. Now, how did I get that FrxETH number? Well, I simply took all the FrxETH that we have, multiply that by 7%, because on average, that's kind of what we get. And then I divided that by 12. Multiply that by 8%, because 8% is the fee share that Frax receives as our revenue. Then I divided that by 12 to get a monthly number. Obviously, that's going to be changing every month, but that is a rough idea of what we could be earning. So overall, for June so far, we have generated 427K in profit. Kind of love to see that. I love to see no reds here, but I feel like, the month has just started and many things can happen. And if you want to keep on seeing what happens, we got to see you next week. So please make sure you smash that subscribe button, tune into Flywheel, and go to flywheeldefi.com to subscribe to our Substack and join the conversation at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter and Telegram. And also, guys, just this last week, we had our very first Asia World Tour meetup in ETH Seoul. It was hosted by myself, as well as some of the good folks over at IQ and Frax. And we're able to have a great time. Thank you so much for all those that showed up. We really appreciate the love. And we got to play some trivia. We gave away some gift cards. We had wings, pizza, hot dog. It was a good time. It was a good time. Drinks were flowing, vibes were flowing. So thank you so much for everybody who showed up to that. And please stay tuned for more events to come. And with that, I want to wish you guys a great week. And if you want to talk to me, you can find me at 0xcapital_K on Twitter. And I will see you guys next week. Peace.